good morning, teacher. You know, I mean, I tell my students don't do it. It's fine. Say hi. So what? You know, why get into that rigid system? It's like a cat which looks into the mirror and thinks it's a tiger. Right? It looks so. It's wonderful to look at it like that. The cat feels he's a tiger. He's a tiger. So what? Success of the college. I mean, I would definitely relate it to happiness of a student. But design is that. He's working well. He's happy about it. That's the best success story I can give. So used to pleasing the teacher with a right answer. Is the answer valid to me? I don't know. But I have to go and give the right answer. We have conditioned in that process. The vertical of the T is your primary source of information. You're a master in T, right? The horizontal is the rest.
How do you measure the success of a design school? Placements, salaries, packages? Our today's guest gave a radical answer. Measure if student learning or graduating are happy or not. Welcome to the GAN project. I'm Kedar Nimkar. Today with me is Dineshwar S, an architect with 35 years of practice, over 2 decades of design education, and the man behind Bangalore School of Design and Technology. We got into some uncomfortable truths. Why design schools are stuffing 90 students in one classroom, like a factory line. Why hasn't architecture syllabus changed since these, and what it really means to be an aspirational designer. If you're a design student, an educator, or someone who believes India can do better with how we teach creativity, don't miss this one. Subscribe to the GAN project, follow the GAN project and Bangalore School of Design and Technology on social media. For everything we discussed and more, links are in the show notes. Welcome, Dinesh, to the GAN project, and thanks for giving your time. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to speak to you and for you to engage me on this wonderful podcast. Looking forward to it.
Great. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, I'll be speaking about design education, and I wanted to start with the first question, which is more meta, that how do you define design? How do you define education?
Yeah, that's a good question. The question which students ask when they first join in. I'm defining design actually, let's say over the years, actually, definition of design has sort of, let's say, changed over the years. Say like design is not how or what it looks like, but it's actually how it works. That's how design is over the years, how it works. Now, giving the same definition for a student, I would say it's design is a journey for them, right? It's a journey, it's just a start. So design is much of a journey for them. Design is also creativity. I mean, like Albert Einstein said, creativity is intelligence having fun. So design is fun in the end. So when you can actually get that into the students in their journey, designing is fun. It becomes much more related to them. In the end, you realize design is finally a language. The less I explain design, the better is a person's design. Right? Design talks for itself. So design is obvious, actually, and if design is more transparent, that's design. So design in the end is a language which comes across to different people in different languages. So that's what design is in a nutshell for you. So design education, how do we go about now giving design education to people? Design education is done through experience. There is no book for design education. So the best thing we can give to students is through the experience or through the years we have had through practice, how we go about certain things, how we work on details. So design is progressive. Design education is progressive. Let's say when we take in the first year to the fifth year, right? The design is a progressive process. It doesn't happen. Everything is installed at the student's head in the first part of the year, basically, right? So let's say if when we do the interior design for a student in the first year, we just ask them to work out, we give them a small space, we ask them to work on the space. What happens is we just give them the basic senses of space allocation. Get into the other parameters. There are many parameters which comes into the design education over the second year, third years, fourth years. So let's say the same space given in the second year they will talk about lighting, they might talk about the ventilation aspects. So the next parameters come into flow. In the third year, maybe the volume comes into flow, how you take the space, the colors come into flow. So design education is actually a development process from the journey, which I said, right? Like I first said, for a student of design, it's a journey of discovery. So that discovery is what a school should do in the right way. So you should understand how much of exposure a design is given and the design education is given to them in the first year of the design programs all the way to the fifth year. So it's basically a lot of parameters which come into aspects of a design education. On the first year, maybe you will have 2, 3. In the second, you add a few. In the third, fourth, it adds on. And by the time They reach the fifth year, let's say design becomes fun for them, because when it's fun is when you know everything. So they start understanding
Hmm.
design as a wholesome. So design education is a process.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and would you differentiate between education in general versus design education? Because whatever you said is again discovery, right? Like it makes a student, a person curious of what they're learning, how they are learning, why certain things are done. So would you classify design education to be slightly different than education, and if so, how?
Definitely it is. I would classify it to be different, massively different actually. Design education is basically, see, like I said, it's the first thing about design education versus a standard education. If you look at it, design education is creativity. It's a language, like I mentioned, right? You will have X number of solutions for a given design. It depends on what the space requires. It depends on let's say what the client requires. It depends on the climatic conditions. It might differentiate based on the let's say the location of the project. All that comes, you have to understand all that to do a solution in design. Whereas let's say standard education is,
Hmm.
it's I mean, if I compare it to another field where the answers are already set, so there is no going beyond the answer, right? Like I mean, if I just give a very basic 2 plus 2 is 4, nobody questions it anymore, right? Now if I'm going to give a space and I
Hmm.
say this is the color I'm going to put, let's say burgundy on a wall, I can question that. Why burgundy? Why not another color? Why can't we mix another color? So the questions start. That is getting inquisitive. The curiosity of the solution is design education
Hmm.
compared to a standard education, right? You know, that's a
Interesting.
huge difference actually. Yeah. So when you get them inquisitive, so the thing about design education is the most important thing I would say is, you know, getting them to think. Design thinking is design education.
So you kind of, I heard in one of your YouTube talks that you said something about aspirational design, and I believe it's
Oh,
also like a building block of Bangalore School of Design and Technology. So could you explain what is aspirational design?
see, basically, I mean, if somebody takes the definition for aspirational design, it's something like it's kind of an approach, let's say, that goes beyond solving the immediate problems, right? So I will explain this in a very nice way, which I talk to students. It's very clearly is what we talk
Hmm.
to students is to aspire to be something. The word aspire, right? See, what's happening in today in design. Being a designer is something. Being an aspirational designer is something. So a simple example is, let's just take somebody's designing a toilet. Okay, it's a very simple thing, right? When we say toilet, we all know there's going to be a wash basin, there's going to be a commode, there's going to be a shower. So what does a designer do? He just puts a wash basin, he puts a commode, he puts the shower. Now let's say I start to think ahead, like in my shower, where I'm going to keep my toiletries. So do I create a niche for it? The
Hmm.
first thought process, you aspire to set that right. Is it within my reach? So where do I locate it? The next, setting it right. So what happens? You are aspiring to become clearer in your design. You're trying to get
Hmm.
perfection in your design. Like I'm going to use my toilet. Now there is my health facet. Water drips from the health facet. Where do I put my drain? So what happens? It is not just putting a wash basin or a commode or the a shower. It is the other parameters which are involved in the design. When you
Hmm.
start to think on those kind of things, then you are aspiring to make it better. So what happens? You
Hmm.
then start to stand out in design. So that's so important. You make them reach that goal. You will get the students to start the design thinking in that process, right? And when they
Got
start
it.
doing that, then they start realizing that they are now aspiring to do things better in design compared to a, let's say, another person who's just putting the toilet and the commodes and the shower. So when you're clearing up all this kind of a
Hmm.
thought process, the end user goes in, uses it perfectly, and comes out. So
Hmm.
that's the basic process of understanding or pushing them towards being an aspirational design. That's how it
Hmm.
is, more or less. I'm
But
just
for
giving you a very
yeah,
nutshell.
yeah, no, no, totally makes sense. But if I have to just double click on this further and ask, because for me as a layman, I would say that this also means having empathy, right? This also means having curiosity. And for a teacher, especially a design teacher or a design professor, their job will be just to question of what the student has made and just keep questioning the student in a reverse way, that why do you think this and why do you think that. So are there like any building blocks or like, yeah, I mean, like any framework that you use to make up an aspirational designer?
What? Okay, how we go about it is basically, like I said, it is, yeah, we do put or emphasize on immersive learning, let's say, alongside core
Hmm.
design skills. Okay, So what about is preparing the student not apart from just not being an employee. Okay, so what happens
Hmm.
is that this kind of emphasis towards becoming a better designer comes in through this process of engaging them in this kind of conversations, engaging them with the experts from the field who are brought in regularly for their design programs, and so they get inspired from that. Now, how do they become their own designers from that instead of just taking it out from what they saw and put? So when they go see a case study, they learn something, come back, and then they come and try to okay, there's generally there is supposed to be four pointers for the aspirational design, right? I mean, that's what you're pointing at. Okay, so to
Yeah.
me, it's three. A designer is
Hmm.
like the first. I would call it the purpose and the intent, right? So how
Hmm.
can your design help make it better? If I just give a layout, I ask a layman to put furniture in living room. He will put. He knows the living room needs to have a sofa as a side table, a center table. I mean, they'll just bring it and put it. A lot of people are doing it. But how does design help it make it better? That's the intent, the purpose, basically, right? So to make it, so the first point I'm trying to brief clarity on that.
Yeah.
So also let's say there's a certain delusional quality that like all successful people have, like the belief that something different can be done. You understand? So that's, let's say, if you really look at it, lot of good designers, a lot of successful people, if you look at it, they think different. They know that something different can be done, and they go about doing it irrespective of all the hurdles, right? So that's something which we try, that essence we try to bring it into our students, like to make them think a little delusional. I mean, even if you want to put it in a tougher way to it, so we make them think the design
Hmm.
thinking process, right? Yeah, they're like, so why the sofa should be here? Why can't we take it near the door? What's going to happen?
Hmm.
I mean, it could be such a question which can sound as dumb, but challenges them to think, right? They'll
Hmm.
then push, can we push the door away? So what will happen if this layout is better? So the forward thinking of saying, why can't we move the door so that the
Hmm.
layout is better? So some people, most of the designers will say, we'll just work with the given space, with the given doors, with the given windows, and the layout is not perfect. Now, if I move the sofa to the door and move the door, then the layout is perfect. You understand? So that's the kind of thinking process which comes into play there. So your intent is clearer that way. So that purpose and
Hmm.
intent becomes the first pointer to the whole thing, right? It's almost like, so it's like pronoia. It's like, it's almost, you're almost becoming, it's like a cat which looks into the mirror and thinks it's a tiger, right? It looks
Hmm.
so, it's wonderful to look at it like that. The cat feels he's a tiger. So what? Right? It's like that. The
Hmm.
world is like that. If you make them start, the students give that impression that when they write from first year, they start feeling they are a designer, and hence we need to look at things differently. We push them to that kind of a process of that purpose and intent of our program in the first year onwards starts with that. The second, like you mentioned, is the emotional needs. Like understand actually how the design resonates better. That's something which is important too. We get them to work on it in a lot of ways. Like the need of each person varies, so the empathy or the emotional needs work. The third and the most important, I would say, is manifest the design. Through
Hmm.
details. So we have all heard the saying, "God is in the details." I mean, it's such a famous saying, right? Everybody, I mean, a designer, anybody who follows design will know God is in the details, right? But
Hmm.
details are not the details to me. Over years, like I said, when we said what is design, over the years we have learned details are not the details, but it's what actually makes the design. You
Hmm.
you get it. So you put all the details together, right? The design is there, right? The purpose
Yeah.
gets solved, the intent gets done. So to me, these are the three main points which we push our students to work with. We push them on detailing. Even if they don't have the time, we tell them just work out one detail. Maybe
Hmm.
the study program, let's say, happens in 4 months. So they're not able to finish the design. I mean, it's something which happens in all colleges. I've seen that within the given period they have to finish the design. So if you actually look at schools of architecture, schools of interior design, where I've also gone for juries, reviews, and all, you see there are a lot of empty sheets. The design
Hmm.
sheets are done, but generally it's just the plans, maybe a few section support. But actually, we realize that it's all half incomplete. So what happens is half knowledge which
Hmm.
is coming out. Now, if I can make my student finish even one detail, let's say he's doing a house interiors, and he just works on a kitchen detail, right? I know that once he's done one detail, I know he's capable of the next,
Hmm.
instead of doing everything half finished. So that's the kind of push. That's aspiring him to be a better designer. So aspiring him to focus on one detail instead of telling him, okay, buddy, you need to finish the living room details, you need to finish the wardrobes, you need to finish flooring. So they go berserk. So I tell them, don't bother about all that. Just finish one. Don't worry about the marks. Don't even give a damn about all the marks. Just work on your detail. You get one detail right, one shutter detail right, you're through for life. You know how the shutter is going to work. So that's the
Hmm.
kind of aspiration it pushed them to reach our school.
Yeah, it's so nice to hear because yeah, even when I used to hire and still hire, we see that the details are missing. A lot of designers are quite
Yeah.
interested in the strategic part of it, but when it gets to like micro execution, it's little troublesome. Great, and also when you do detailing, like in my words, I call it zooming in and zooming out.
Trying
So
to
you
reconnect.
zoom in into certain areas and then figure out the details, and then you zoom out to know the larger context. Cool. And so I had a different question about the gaps. So I spoke to Anirudh Joshi, professor from IIT, long ago, and I asked him that you see a lot of new designers coming into the marketplace, but they lack a lot of things, right? Because typically pedagogy and industrial practice, there's a delay, right? So he nicely explained that there are like three gaps. One is, I don't recollect exactly, but one is it's intentional because when they enter the job market, they are ready with the skills, but they are ready with the skills in abstract, and then they learn according to the domain that they are entering into, right? So any idea about like what are the gaps that you see when students are entering into the market and getting on a job, because you do practice and education both? So have you noticed any such things where there's gap?
There is a huge gap. So this gap which you mentioned, is it that kind of an intentional gap which the professor mentioned to you? So I'm going to assume there is. See, there is. Let's say there is a space. Let's say a void, the right word.
Hmm.
Like between theoretical learning to the real world application. To me, what is happening is what I see in the industry, because I've been in practice for almost 35 years and I've been teaching students in different colleges. And let's say Bangalore School of Design is about 7 years up. And so I see this gap or this void is growing, which is not good to me.
Hmm.
What I've seen with students, it's there's a lot of various factors which could be the reason because of this void, which is really going bigger and bigger. The gap between theoretical learning to real world application, like I said, is simply maybe because of a lot of one of the most common reasons I can give is the distractions the kids have with a lot of stuff. We didn't have all that, so it's a different scenario then to what it is today. But said, the kids are much smarter today. That's for sure, right? I mean, the knowledge which they have or which they bring in before they even enter the first year is much more than what we had.
Hmm.
Okay, so what I see when we get our first students which come in, all design students go in with a purpose. They know they're going for design. They know they're going into a design learning. That's what they want to be. It's not like a big course where there's just the bulk computer engineers and there's a nursing, or
Hmm.
where they just go in huge crowds. Right? There's a very selective crowd which now is entering design education. So they're already aware. So the first thing is, we as faculty should know that they know the stuff.
Hmm.
They're aware of what they're going to come in with, and they have much better knowledge today than what we had when we entered design education, because the exposure is so much. Why is the gap happening? Because the education is becoming boring to the students. Now, if I'm going into classroom, I already know what is design, the principles of design, let's say, the basic, let's say, the balance or those kind of factors. I'm very much aware of all that. Now, again, if I go into classes and the faculty is taking the syllabus and reading the same thing, I start getting bored. Correct. Now, I'm going into design because I'm looking at the faculty to engage me with design thinking, making me
Hmm.
curious, making me aspire to become a better designer. The
Hmm.
faculty needs to engage in that kind of a format. This gap, right? There is intentional gap. There's no doubt, because obviously theory and practice are two different segments. So what you learn in theory, when you put in practice, starts to merge better. So when we did it, the gap was little, right? Simply because there were not so many options in design. We were not exposed to, let's say, parametric designs then. We didn't have those elements of huge high rise buildings, or the amount of exposure to interior design was not there. So our gaps were limited. Now oh, it is much more. And you have
Hmm.
biophilic design, you have parametric design, you have, I mean, it's all many kind of design scales and forms have come up and structures have changed over the years. So how do we engage them in today's trends, which is required for tomorrow? So if I,
Hmm.
as a faculty, am able to understand that and help them, work with them, I, as a faculty, aspire to be a better faculty
Hmm.
where I have the pick up the knowledge to give it to them, make them better in terms of the designing aspects and all. Will definitely bridge the gap to a certain extent instead of it becoming more. I think
Hmm.
that's more important that we are able to first acknowledge that they are coming into the classroom with a huge set of knowledge which was not there before.
Hmm.
So we need
Hmm.
to work on it with them. I think that's
Yeah, yeah.
something which I think all colleges I think need to do.
No, you rightly mentioned about having good exposure before they join, also. And it's very true because I see young designers or young engineers using AI and building things on their own, also. But then there's a trap, right? Because there are certain traditional processes and practices and rules of design. Now, in the earlier thing you mentioned about designers being challenged that why is it not near the door, or why are you not thinking, or just challenging them can also lead to ignorance, right? Because you are neither built your foundationals right and you're exposed to a lot of interesting things which may or may not have a foundation, right? Because everything is out there, it depends on how you consume, so the teaching method itself changes. So if you could give me some idea about how do you explain to break the rules before knowing the rules.
That's simply out of the box learning. It's nothing else than doing an out of the
Hmm.
box learning. There's a structured box right now with which schools
Hmm.
teach. I think it's the way we were taught even from school days. I would bring that into question from our primary education itself. It's one of the is
Hmm.
what our thought process is, right? We are so used to pleasing the teacher with a right answer.
Hmm.
Is the answer valid to me? No, I don't know. But I have to go and give the right answer. We have conditioned in that process. So
Hmm.
what happens is how do we unlearn this? I think that's what design school should do basically, because when the student comes in from his 12th standard to so from teaching, he's coming into an undergrad program and there is no teacher there for him. It's a lecturer. That's why we call them lecturers, we call them professors, right? The student then starts self learning where the professor should be guiding them
Hmm.
instead of teaching. Like
Hmm.
that's something which is a very fine line, which is not. It's a very, let's say, a line which is very merged together and very difficult to break away in our system of education. But I push my faculty to do that. Now, when they let him make his mistakes, they learn from that. Why would now when he comes in, let's like I have students who have come in and he says he wants to have a sofa which can be lifted up and so that the space below can be used for moving around freely because he's got a dog in his house. I fell in love with that kid, but then there are faculty who say, "How can you even lift a sofa?" It's simply
Hmm.
because of the whole mechanism of saying pleasing the teacher. So there are these kids. Now, am I going to call that kid ignorant? Am I going to call the kid arrogant? I wouldn't call him anything. I would call him brilliant. That he is
Hmm.
applying his mind to do something different. That's what I said. Delusional learning. It's no harm because they will reach the right place. I mean, if you let them do those kind of things over the 5 years or 4 years or 3 years of learning, they will reach the spot. But if
Hmm.
I curb him, if I say now, no, what you're doing in design learning, I'm specifically talking about design thinking and design learning. If I stop his thinking and call and and put a name to him, saying, no, you're being very stupid. There's no reasoning, and you're arrogant. I'm totally killing his thought process.
Hmm.
Why would I do that? You shouldn't be doing it. Actually, it's sad. It happens in schools. It
Hmm.
happens. I mean, I hope it's not happening in my schools because I'm not behind all the faculty. But then I see this is something which is a fallback from our primary education, right?
Hmm.
Not allowing the child to think anything,
Yeah.
right? Why should I sit and write on a table? Okay,
Hmm.
there are norms that when you sit, you are at comfortable ease and writing. Why can't we sit on a bar stool and write? We have drafted, right? When we were learning to, when for us, there was no computer, so we had to draft, right? We had to bend. So then we designed tables which could be at a level where our back doesn't bend. We learn to, so necessity becomes invention. The kids learn. So you let them do that due process of learning. That's the best
Hmm.
thing. That's the best way to learn design. instead of fixing an answer. And then what happens if most schools do that, right? When we fix the answer, then the pleasing starts to happen. Then you are trying to say this is the right way. Everybody wants to go the right way. Who knows? Design is not like that.
Correct,
So there's
correct.
no
No,
arrogant or ignorant student. It's anybody who does some. They're all, to me. Any student who comes in design is brilliant. It's just that they might have language issues because we being so lingual. Some people don't know the English. That's fine. They can speak in
yeah.
Hindi. They can speak in Tamil. Kannada. It's fine. I tell them communicate, express in whichever language you want. That's why design is a language. You can
Hmm.
do it. It's just that we need to give
Beautiful.
them that confidence.
No, totally makes sense. In fact, I'm reminded of this TED talk by Ken Robinson, very famous talk, right?
Oh,
And
nice.
in that, he said, like, there was one child drawing God, and the professor came and said, "What are you drawing?" And she said, "I'm drawing God." And he said, "But nobody has seen God." And she said, "They will in a moment." Right? I mean, she's drawing, so people will see it,
So
right? Like,
superb.
and it's so
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
beautiful answer. Yeah, totally makes
Yeah,
sense.
it's a wonderful statement.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that multidisciplinary approach to things is important, and I can see that in your answers as well. So, if you can give some examples of how well rounded learning experience can happen if a design student is just wanting to learn design in a genuine quest. The reason why I'm stressing on multidisciplinary is because when at least I see a lot of designers whom I hire or work with, the definition of design is very narrowed, and you see a lot of bubbles in and ecosystems within the smaller segment. So an interior designer may not be as curious as what is happening in UX versus a researcher may not be interested in what is how technology is working. So there are these little silos which are being created across, again, due to education. So what are your thoughts on that and how important it is to break those walls?
Okay, so this is for so this I'm going to answer this question for the future generation, right? That the kids were coming up. For us, it doesn't. It's a
Yeah.
different. For us, it was a different multidisciplinary learning. Okay, so for us, it was like as an architect, I was told in school always that we need to be jack of all trades, right?
Mm.
Because being an architect, we need to know. Like I mean, my core was design, right? And then we have we have to have an understanding of air conditioning. We need to have an understanding of the plumbing. We need to have an understanding of, let's say, the electrical aspects of it, the structural aspects of it. So we have to get, so they were these subjects for us. But let's say if I take structures, we were never fully into structural design, right? We
Mm.
need to have a knowledge of it to understand how to work with our design because we're putting up a structure. It's not art. It's end of the day a building or a interiors which people are going to experience a space. So we need to understanding of, let's say, certain aspects of even sanitary and plumbing because we need to understand firefighting, air conditioning, HVAC. So that was for us then. So I could get away with. So I'm talking again for the future kids who will be hopefully looking into this podcast. The world is so there is now. It's a very common metaphor which is now so used in the new design world is called the T.
Mm.
It's right. I hope
T-shaped design
so.
now.
Yeah, the T shape. It's basically the vertical of the T is your primary source of information. You're a master in T, right? The horizontal is the rest, right? So you have to have that kind of disciplines to collaborate.
Specialization.
Yes, that's so. What is happening is you need to start specializing in different fields. It's no more what we had. Now you need to have different skill sets. I would call it skill sets per se. The horizontal part of the T bar, I would call it skill sets. So when we sit and talk to our peers, my classmates, my other peers, and all, so we always have this argument over a drink. Is it required? Are they getting, let's say, they're not doing design properly, they're not doing this properly. So always have this argument. It goes back and forth. So, but in the end, we see what's happening with hiring. We see what's happening with companies. Is with AI coming into play, huge, right? They really need that kind of a skill set simply because now when we used to practice before, I used to do end all. Like
Mm.
I'll be the, let's say, the architect. I'll be the interior designer. I'll be the furnishing designer. I used to furnish. I used to go for curtain selection. I used to go for, let's say, even sanitary selections. I mean, we used to do everything. Like I said, jack of all trades. But
Yeah.
today's projects, we are doing a huge resort project right now, which is coming up. We have a separate landscape designer. We have a separate furnishings and furniture designer. And I was
Mm.
actually quite taken aback when that person walked into the for the meeting. So the client introduced me saying she's a furniture. I was a little taken aback. I actually felt insulted to a certain level that I know it. Why are you bringing somebody else? But
Mm,
that's the level of now perfection people are looking. So you need that skill set. And I cannot encompass a student with everything today in
mm,
the given time frame of 3 years. What we can, so they are now, let's say, the best thing about it is, like I said, the best thing about today's students is they are aware that such kind of specialization is now happening. So
mm,
let's say by the first year, second year, the student starts to understand that he can go into different streams. He can tomorrow start focusing down on furniture and furnishings. He can become a set designer. He can become a automobile designer. The best thing about design is that, the wonderful thing about design education, the first 3 years, you can be any designer tomorrow. You can even get into
mm,
automobile design,
mm,
which is not there in any stream,
mm,
realistically looking. And you can actually turn yourself towards any direction you want. You can do film sets. You can be a crockery designer. So
mm.
much in demand in Italy. So just designing crockery is something. There are sanitary designers who are in so much demand. They just need to design commodes and wash basins. Their job
Mm.
is that. So the guy who's done architecture has actually specialized in sanitary ware design.
Wow.
So they're going into that level of detail. That kind of multidisciplinary setup is now the future. So they need to actually focus into it. So what happens is
Mm,
his skill set becomes to the highest. So he is no more. So the T is very important going ahead for the students. They need to sort of understand that they are understanding it. So we sort of put them across this kind of talk to them during class hours, specifically from the third year onwards or in the fourth and fifth semester. And more than us, they also come out of they're also aware of all the kind of YouTubes and stuff. So they bring it across to us. So it is important
mm.
to have this kind of a push towards a student to focus on their multidiscipline learning.
I was also going to ask you actually, is curiosity diminishing? But I think it more points to primary education than what people are self curious about. Like, you have any thoughts on that? Or do you feel that it's missing the curiosity level because of exposure or because of education, or maybe because of everything is mapped towards utility? Like, the teaching is happening because you want a job, you have a very clear end outcome, as opposed to just opening up for yourself for like madness.
Okay, so the first part of your question, curiosity is it diminishing? Like I said, I would term it no. I think they're getting very curious. The thing is, they have
Mm,
the answers to the curiosity. So what happens? I'll tell you is they're not putting it across to the faculty anymore. So we assume that they don't have. They're all a human being is curious. It's inbuilt nature in our genre. I mean, there's no way we are not curious, right? Any animal is. It's part of the ecosystem. They are curious about everything. The stuff is they get their answers outside us.
mm,
That's something which we have to be careful. So we need to actually question them and answer their curiosity the right way. Then they'll come to you. It's as simple as that. So
mm,
they are curious. There's no way about it. The thing about is it due to primary education to a huge extent? I would say yes,
mm,
always. I mean, I still believe the primary education is the main cause for the what how the students are today and how we are as a generation. How we are today is simply because of the primary education. That the simple procedure of I mean, it's in a fun way. Good morning, teacher. You understand? I mean, I tell my students don't do it. It's fine. Say hi. So what? Why get into that rigid system? By
mm,
doing that, you're already acknowledging that person is superior. Why it's something whether the faculty has the knowledge, whoever it is, you don't need to feel superior, right? I mean, it's a
yeah,
given thing now. That is the issue of a primary education system, making the teacher superior, already telling the students you don't have the knowledge, and then whatever the
mm,
teacher says becomes true, and then the student in turn starts pleasing. That's why you have the students whom the teacher likes, the ones whom they don't like. So what happens? You're creating hierarchy in classrooms, which is not required. So that's, yeah, it is due to primary education, I think, basically to a certain extent.
y-
But given it is breaking, today's
yeah,
generation students are far better. They are not like us, so they don't have the British hangover, I would call it. They have
mm,
come out of it. They are coming out of it definitely. So they are questioning us much more, which is very good. They are questioning the client. If the faculty doesn't have the knowledge, they are questioning. They are talking to the management. So it is
mm.
it is changing for the better. So it does.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
definitely improving. That's for sure.
Correct. No, no, totally. I mean, when you said hierarchy, I keep thinking about this all the time that when even the classroom, the way it's designed, the teacher is slightly above the
True.
students, that creates an experience where the water is going to fall from top to the bottom due to gravity,
Very true.
which means that the teacher needs to know more than the student, which isn't the case today because the
Yes.
student also has a lot of exposure due to social media, YouTube, and other things, right? So I think I'm going to call this talk "Teachers Need to Work Hard." Let's see how.
My
Um,
God, I'm going to get
yeah.
blacklisted for it.
So, but India's growth has also not been through innovation, right? I mean, when you look at the recent AI summit, also, do you feel so like, and again, pointing to the fundamental education in primary schools and in secondary schools, are there any three ways where innovation can happen in design at a very radical level, right? Like, because we see a lot of innovation, but still it's very incremental in nature. But just taking a leap in design because there's talent, there is like a huge pool
A
of
huge
talent,
talent.
like
Yep,
yeah.
definitely.
So what do you think is stopping, or where are the gaps in terms of bringing innovation?
Innovation is happening, but like you said, it's not focused in schools. I see what I've seen in the last 20 years of teaching, 20 plus years, is the focus is on a lot of other things which are it's not relevant to a certain lot of extent. I think the syllabus is itself is built around that system of not allowing, not giving chance for the students to innovate. I would rather put it that way. I mean, again, it's going back to what we, if you actually look at it, I mean, this is going to be a very radical answer, might get me a lot of, what do you call, wrong
Trolling,
stuff on
trolling.
this, but trolling or whatever you it is if you look at it, the syllabus what we did in 1980s, the architecture syllabus is still being taught. The same syllabus is being done today too. Why are you doing the same
Mm,
stuff, right? I mean, like, and the next question is, has anybody questioned is 5 years required for doing architecture? We have the world has gone in such a fast pace, right? AI has taken us somewhere else, right? The students want to aspire to do better things. They want to do better things, right? They want to innovate it. So now what's happening is my syllabus when I didn't give me an exposure, let's say, to innovate, or it was within that kind of that pace of learning was fine. Today it is not. It's not like that. It's changed. Like, it's almost like, what to put it in a very easier way is what I learned in, say, fifth standard mathematics is being taught to second year students today. The kid has
mm,
evolved. That's what they. I see my cousins' kids and all. They are like doing certain things which I've done in fifth, sixth standard. They are doing in second, third standards. Right? It's we
mm,
all are aware of it. So that, when that has evolved, why not design education? Why has not, let's say, like when you mentioned, bring that factor of innovation with today's technology involved in the design program? So what happens
mm,
is, when you don't change the syllabus, the innovation gets backtracked.
mm, mm,
It doesn't happen because you're still doing the same rumble what you did years before.
mm,
That's why I said it becomes boring. Now, if I get it, let's say, like you said, if I get innovation into learning today in my design learning, I can bring certain kind of realistic innovation process which tallies with the technology of today. What is most
mm.
important is sustainability with the world, how it is happening. If I can get all those processes in, we can do it. It is possible, but it's just that the syllabus is so outdated, which really needs a huge look into by all the great men who are working on the syllabus.
I have two last questions. You mentioned about changing the syllabus right now. So, if a design school has to have some measure or some metric of, yes, my school or this school is particularly good, what would be the measure of it, right? Like, I mean, getting top 20 students into, like, say, IITs is a very crude and sad metric, right? So, is there
Definitely.
any radical way to measure success of a school or a college?
Success of the college, I mean, I would definitely relate it to the happiness of a student, because design is that, right? I mean,
Yep.
it's not, yeah, to maybe to certain people money is happiness, to certain people, like, if I can design a simple cot with a
Mm,
wonderful headboard, right? And I'm so happy that it has come out. If the student is happy with his detailing and
mm,
his end product of design, and he's worked on it thoroughly, and then he's happy about it. I mean, and he's working well, he's happy about it. That's the best success story I can give, I can get as a faculty or as a professor who has guided that student to do things. And he's
Measuring happiness is a little tricky, right? So, is there any concrete number?
I mean, see, this is this question, and we can just go on on chatting on this. See, the thing about measuring a school success, to me, to you, because the question is thrown to me, my answer is, if my students tomorrow outside are working happily, is the best success for me,
Hmm.
right? It is immaterial whether that kid is earning 3 lakhs that month or the other kid is earning six a month or just 50,000 a month. I mean, if the kid is, I speak to him. So I generally, a lot of my students across the years, they call, so they talk to me, and if at the end from their voice, I know they're happy. That's my success. That's how
Hmm.
I look at it. And I'll give an example. I was a visiting faculty for a college, and there was a student who was not doing good in architecture. It was an architecture school. I'm not going to name the school. The faculty, he was a brilliant kid, but he couldn't do design programs. He was struggling in his
Hmm.
design. So I went in as a visiting faculty. I was there for about 8 years, and somehow that kid was given to me as I was a mentor for him for that for a year and his fourth year. And
Hmm.
in that, I started relating to I found out that kid didn't even want to be an architect. He
Hmm.
just wanted to be a choreographer. That was his choice. Being us. Being us means being us is engineers or doctors, what our parents throw us. And the kid
Hmm.
was pushed into it. Like I had a nice chat with him. I told him, do it. I mean, just think this is design. This is dancing.
Hmm.
Design is that. Like, start looking at it like that. Start enjoying what you're doing. It will have some implication in your life tomorrow. The best thing
Hmm.
about design education, I tell you, is it gives us it really formats the student into a wonderful discipline. Because what happens is there is thinking all the time that you're doing something out of the box. So I told him, put your best here. It will come out. You will reach. You will do something.
Hmm.
It's not that this don't. It's not going to go to waste. Let's work
Hmm.
on your design. We used to sit talk with him. That kid is in touch with me even today, like many. And today that kid is a choreographer in New York.
Yes.
So whenever he comes to India, he comes and visits me in my school. Now I have not today. I even today asked him how much he's earning, what is he doing, but that
Hmm.
happiness on his face is my success. So if
Hmm.
I can guide my students to what their end goal is, if I can reach to, if I am a part of that journey, then I am successful. My school is successful. I would look at it like that always. I wouldn't say just because now that kid is running a multi firm, he's got 100 architects under him, he's driving a Lamborghini, he's successful. I mean,
Amazing. I'm
mm.
fully sold. I don't want a number. It's everyone being happy.
Mm.
Cool. My last question is then there have been talks about starting new NID, new schools, Modi ji talking about design and make in India. How do you see future of design education in next? Yeah, it's very tough these days to even say next 10 years because AI is rapidly changing month on month. But any positive kind of vision towards this is the kind of future of education, design education you would like to happen?
Okay, design education is radically changing India, that's for sure. Okay,
Hmm.
we were all so thrilled. I mean, our peers were thrilled that design was spoken in the budget. That was like amazing for us, and somebody giving importance to it after all these years. This
Hmm.
that so. I mean, it is great that the government is recognizing design as a very important factor in the growth of India. That is amazing. So that shows the way the government is thinking ahead, right?
Yeah.
It's a very impactful word that design is part of India's growth is something amazing. That's something which the future students should look for. And
Hmm.
realistically, the growth is huge. I mean, like if you, I think I read about it last week in Times that 2012 to 2020, I think it was a 20 billion industry just in Bangalore alone, the interior industry, and it's set to grow even further.
Hmm.
Asia is growing very well, and India is growing. That's for sure. Whatever happens in the other markets, the best thing about India is we are self-sufficed world,
Hmm.
can suffice ourselves very well, and
Hmm.
the government is doing that part of it quite well. Apart, keeping the politics aside, so
Hmm.
design education is going to grow. That's for sure. We need more. We need good quality design institutes. So I would rather put it as we need good boutique institutes because design
Hmm.
is taught one on one. What hurts me to see is design being used to churn money. I go to
Hmm.
some certain schools. Can you believe they have 120 seats for design in one class? It's like I reel when they say that we have got, and the fact when the management says we have got 90 admissions. I say, shit, what are you going to do with 90 kids in one class? They have sections like you had in 1A, 1B, 1C we used to have in classrooms. Design is not that. Design can never be that. It has to be a so the boutique design schools are very important. Not churn out hundreds of students in one classroom. It's not a cattle where you're coming out and producing milking them every day. It doesn't work like that. So design is important. Design is going to grow. Design schools are much required. Definitely it is required. But you need to have a good set of boutique schools coming up where education is imparted. It is required, yes.
Cool. On that note, we can conclude this. Thanks a lot, Dinesh, for giving your time. It was very, very inspiring, and hope to see some good design work happening in India in the coming decade and years to come. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to you too. It was almost like having a chat with one of my classmates. It was good. It was a good fun we had. Thank you.
All the best. That was Dineshwar with loads of insights into design education. Lots to unpack, listen over, and think. What made you think the most from this conversation? Let me know in the comments. Follow the GAN project and know more about the Bangalore School of Design and Technology. All links are in the show notes. See you in the next one. Stay curious.